Welcome to Chinwag Tuesdays, your passport to a world of language and culture. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Chinwag Tuesdays. I'm Amanda, and today's special guest is Sam. He's an American English teacher living in Brazil. Thank you so much for being here, Sam. Can you start
Thank
off
you.
by telling me a bit about yourself? Tell us everything.
Okay. All right. So let's start with the beginning. I was born in the United States, like you said, and I'm from the Midwest, which is funny because when you look at the US, it's not actually in the middle of the West, right? It's actually more east, but I'm from a state called Illinois, really close to the South. And I'm from a very small town. There was only about 1,000 people in the town. And I didn't really know anything about the rest of the world for a long time. But fast forward through high school and all the normal awkward teenage years. Then, since I was a member of a church that did a lot of missionary work, I decided to volunteer to be a missionary. And when I volunteered, they decided to send me to Brazil. And I did not know Portuguese. I did not know really anything about Brazil. And it's funny because you talk to a lot of Americans and you ask them about these other countries and what they think. And when you say Brazil to someone, they think rainforest, they think soccer, they think of
Yeah.
carnival and those kind of things. And so that's their main thoughts. And so in my mind, I'm like, ooh, I'm going to go see lots of nature, lots of different animals. And I got told to go to a city called São Paulo. And this city is the biggest city in South America. And so when you fly into this city, you do not see any nature. You just see buildings and buildings. Yeah, I was gonna say I got to a jungle, but it was a concrete jungle, right? It
Yeah.
wasn't the nature that I was expecting. But then I got here and I went through a 6 week intensive program of learning the language and learning Portuguese. But really it was more to just help me to learn how to do missionary work in
Mhm.
Portuguese. And so I still didn't know how to do a lot of things. But after that, they sent me to a place that was very far away. And our mission would have an area that we have to stay to. And they sent me to the farthest area possible, which had
Oh my gosh.
most people in the city, some of them know English, but like out in this area, nobody spoke English. The guy that I was working with didn't speak English. And
Yeah.
I did not study very hard to learn Portuguese. So I suffered. I tell people all the time that, like, for me, a lot of people talk about their language learning experience and they talk about how difficult it is, how hard it is. And I
Mm.
completely agree, like 100%. I tell people that I know how hard it is because, and this sounds sad, but like probably for a month straight, I just cried every night because I could not
Yeah.
understand anybody. I didn't know what was happening. People were laughing,
Mm.
and I was in this place, and it was hot, and it was also cold at the same time. And it was just like I was going through all of these things. And also, as a missionary, you walk a lot. And when I got to that place, I was really overweight. But by the time I left, I think I lost 20 kilos in 3 months there just because of how much.
Wow. Oh my gosh.
Uh-huh, and also my shoes. So I had dress shoes, and I thought they were nice dress shoes. But after I was done there, just so you have an idea, like, I would walk and without getting, like, too graphic, my shoes started to have holes in the bottom, and, like, I would take my socks off at night, and they would be wet, and I would wring it out, and it wouldn't be like water, it would be, like, red from the blisters that I would get from walking so much.
Oh my gosh.
And so, yeah, it was very intense. So I'm sure not all of my tears were just because of speaking Portuguese, but it was a
Yeah.
big part. But then after, I always tell people it took me about 3 months, but that was like 3 months of no speaking English, just full immersion.
Hmm.
After that, then I started to be able to understand people. I started to understand the difference between bad words and good things to say. And I was able to finally get through the 2 years and I loved it. It was fantastic. And right after those 2 years, then we had the pandemic. And the
Hmm.
pandemic was weird for me because I guess it was weird for everybody. But for me, it was weird because I had just gotten back from this mission. My plan was to go to college and continue life like a
Mm.
normal person, but COVID really cut that and made it like not the goal, right? And so the colleges didn't know what they were doing. They didn't know if they were going to do online, if they're going to do remote, if it was
Yeah.
going to pause. And I was like, I'm not going to pay money just to go to a school that doesn't know what's happening. So I waited. And during that waiting process, I then was on Facebook a lot. I don't think anybody wasn't on Facebook during the pandemic.
True.
Yeah,
Hmm.
and so I was on Facebook and I found a girl that I really liked and we started talking and flights to Brazil. Well, yeah, that's a key part. The girl was from Brazil. And flights to Brazil during the pandemic were really cheap because nobody wanted to come here. But I did. And so I bought the flights and I came and visited her a lot. And thankfully it was during the pandemic because it was really cheap. Like normally the flight is $1,200, but it was like 600.
Mm.
It was like half the price. So
Wow.
it was a lot cheaper.
Yeah.
And and basically, after visiting a lot, we decided to get married and we got married. And as soon
Hmm.
as we got married, I needed to find something to do in Brazil,
Yeah.
something to work towards. And during those 2 years that I was a missionary, I had taught English as well, but not super serious professional English. It was just
Yeah.
helping people learn. And I enjoyed it, but I never thought that I would go back to teaching English. But then I got
Hmm.
married and I remembered that and I thought, well, let's do this. And so I started to teach English and it was going great. And we talked about this at one time. I was teaching and I realized something. Like I didn't have any like formal education on how to teach
Mm.
English. And that sounds really bad, especially when you say it out loud. And so what I did was I went to find out, well, what do I need to do, right? What do I need to do to make this more professional? And so I
Hmm.
went and found the certificates that I needed to do. And so I did a lot of certificates. I watched a lot of videos. I started to study a lot more about grammar and the whole why. I always tell people that native teachers are great, but an issue that we have is we can tell you what's wrong. We just can't tell you why it's wrong sometimes.
True.
And
Yeah.
so I think the key part to a good native teacher is someone who can tell you wrong and then also tell you why you were wrong.
Hmm.
And that's up until now. So that's my story.
Amazing.
Sorry, that was
I
a
love
long
it.
story, but that's it.
No, I think mine was just as long. And to those people watching, I actually did a podcast with Sam as well. So I'll link that up the top and in the description if you're interested in hearing my side of things. But I love what you said about, no, I don't love what you said about you crying for a month. That sounds bad. But when you said about the language, because it's so isolating. When you move to a country and you can't communicate, for me, moving to India, it wasn't too bad because people can speak English, but it was still isolating for me because I didn't have any friends. It was hard to make friends with the time difference with here in Australia. When I did eventually get free at night and my husband was working, all of my family and friends were sleeping. So it's really hard when you don't know the language and you can't
Yeah.
communicate. I think when you had said that you got to the level you're at now with Portuguese within a couple of months of intense immersion, that is what people assume my Hindi is like because I live in India. But again, most people can speak English. So I don't have that kind of forced immersion. But I do have a goal to be like at least C1, C2 level at the end of the year. So fingers crossed.
Yeah. But another thing I think that's important is that we've talked about this before too, is like the culture.
Yeah.
I think apart from just adapting to a language, adapting to the culture of that place can be really difficult. And
Yeah.
like I said, I could start speaking after those 3 months. And this is what a lot of people don't understand is that you can speak after a few months, but if you really want to get perfect, right? If you really want to start speaking
Mm,
more intellectually or as we say academically, it
mm,
takes a lot longer. That I always
yeah.
tell I think people look at me weird when I say I think learning basic English is the easiest part. And the reason why I say
Yeah.
that is because when you go from nothing to something, you notice it. You're like, "Wow, great.
Yeah.
I can
True.
speak. I can do this." But when you go from
Yeah.
something to more of something, it's I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm better or if I'm worse. I feel like I was like 5 months
Yes, that's how
ago.
I feel right now. Yeah.
Yeah, and the whole intermediate level is I think is really challenging because a lot of people don't
It
see
is.
progress, and
Yeah.
so it just you have to do something to keep track of that.
Definitely. Well, that kind of leads into the next question is culture shock. So what were the things you struggled with when you did first move to Brazil? Not when you were a missionary, though. let's talk about, because you already talked about that, but when you moved there to, when you know, met your wife, what were some things you struggled with when you moved there the second time permanently?
No, that's an excellent question. I think even if you wouldn't have told me to focus on like when I got married, I think I would have told you that as a missionary, there were some like different things, but there wasn't anything super crazy because it was already the culture wasn't the country's culture necessarily, but like the mission culture. After I got married, and this is I was telling a friend this yesterday actually. I said, I think something that is not irritates me, but something that I think is a little difficult to understand is that when people move to another country and they still are married to someone from their country or from their
Mm,
culture, they don't fully immerse themselves in country's culture. No matter how hard they try, they don't.
yeah,
Because you just can't. Like
yeah,
there are things, for example, that I know and that I have to know because my wife is from here and her family is from here. So they do things in a way that I can't go to my wife and be like, "Huh, this is crazy." No, because it's her culture, it's who she is. And so
yeah.
I have to learn to accept that. And I think a couple of those things, one really big thing I think for me is that here, I don't know how this is in Australia, but at least in the US, a general rule is that you wait for somebody to finish before you start talking, right? Like you take turns.
Mm,
It's respectful, right? That's the respectful thing to do, and if we didn't do it, our mom would slap us in the face and tell us to be quiet and wait your turn. And here in Brazil, some people will tell you that you should do that, but most people don't obey that, and it works for them, like, it works in their culture. They know when somebody's done, and so that's when they cut them off and start talking. And the thing is, I didn't know when to cut people off. And so what happened
mm,
is I would listen and listen and listen, and there would just be no end. People wouldn't stop talking, and I couldn't talk, and that was really frustrating. And I think another thing, this is a silly one, but there's a joke here that Americans don't take showers, right? That we're not hygienic because
mm.
here in Brazil, the bare minimum of showers is at least 2 per day. But that's
Yeah,
the
wow.
minimum. If you're a dirty person, you take 2 showers a day. Most people
Oh,
take 3,
wow.
4, and these showers aren't even like a quick rinse. It's take a shower, think about your life, and enjoy
Oh
yourself
my
for
God.
like 10 to 15 minutes every day. Yeah, I think people spend probably about an hour in the shower every day or more. And
Imagine those water bills.
I don't know. I don't because I still I try to take showers as much as they do, but it's hard because for me, this
Mm,
is something that I tell people, taking a shower for me is a chore, right? It's something that I have to
yeah.
do because it keeps
Mm,
myself clean. For them, it's like it's an event. It's like something that you one time my wife, we were talking, she was like, "Don't you like taking showers?" And I was like, it's not that I don't like it. It's just, but to me, it's not something that I'm like excited to do. Not unless I'm super dirty or smelly and I want
yeah.
to do that. And so for them, it's just something that they enjoy doing. And
Yeah.
so going through that, and then I think like another, I think it's interesting you say like culture shock because I think a lot of people when they think of culture shock, they think of, oh, okay, I'm here. Wow, this is crazy. This is different. This is this. But
Mm,
we learned that culture shock is when you start to resent where you are,
yeah.
you start to have negative feelings about the place where you are.
Mm,
And
yeah. I feel like
I
it's
don't remember.
gradual. I think there are some
Yeah,
culture shocks that are definitely gradual. They don't just slap you in the face. Some do, but a lot of it's a
yeah,
gradual thing.
exactly. There's just little things, and you start to miss your home. I think in the
Mm,
US, the luxury of convenience was something that I really
mm,
took for granted because coming here, they have everything. It's not like a bad place, but it's just sometimes to do something, you just have to do so much more work to get to it.
mm,
And
yeah.
I think that was something that kind of just irritated me, or the fact that, for example, in the US, almost every house has air conditioning or has heating,
Mm,
whatever you need. And here, if you have air conditioning, that's more of a luxury. It's something that is expensive that
yeah.
you have to invest in.
Yeah.
And I think for me, just those little things added up. And I do remember a moment that I was just like, yeah, I hate this. I don't want to
Yeah.
be here. I want to go home. But
Hmm.
then as we know, once you get through your culture shock, I always tell people it's like first you love the place, then you hate the
Hmm.
place, and then you're like, you know what? I like it. but it has problems, but I like it. And so it turns into a more mature adult relationship. It's like getting married, right? Like you just absolutely are in love with your spouse, and then after a while you're like, oh my gosh, this is annoying, and then after that you're like,
Yeah.
this is a really great choice.
Yeah.
We're working on things together, and that's how I feel about Brazil.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so true. It's funny what you said about the first one about people like interrupting you when you talk. In Australia, and this is something I teach in like my Australian business English lessons about like culture, you don't interrupt people when they talk. It's considered especially rude and extremely rude, sorry. And yeah, in India, just no care for it. Like you just talk when you want, even if the other person's talking, absolutely like no consideration. And when, oh my gosh, when I first moved here, I used to hate it. But it also is an insecurity for me because growing up, I'm a middle child. I always felt like I was like the one that was left out. Yeah. And I talked a lot as a kid. I talk a lot anyway. And I used to get in trouble for talking a lot at the wrong time. So I think for me, it was also like a bit of an insecurity or a trigger. I remember posting about this when I first started my Instagram about business culture in Australia. And an Indian replied back and was like, what do you mean it's considered rude? Like when you interrupt someone. And I explained, well, it is like you should let someone finish. He's, well, not here, not in India, because if we have something to say, we'll just say it when we want to. And I'm like, that's the point. It's a little bit rude. So that was, yeah, definitely something that I struggled with a lot too, was that interruption when speaking, because it's just so different.
It's weird, but it's something that like I said, I tell people here when I tell them because they you say these things and then they're like, oh, but why are you talking bad? And I was like, I'm not saying it's a bad thing. It's the culture.
Yeah,
It's just how it is
it's
here.
different.
And yeah,
Yeah,
it's different. It's is it something that I like personally? No, but that doesn't mean that it's not okay. It just means that for me, I
yeah.
prefer the whole start, pause, because to me it's easier to control that. Whereas here,
Hmm.
sometimes you really do have something important to say, and you can't say all of it because somebody thinks that you have used up your time.
Pressure.
Right, right. It has to be important enough for people to want to listen to the whole time.
Yeah. All right. So, what are the things you find interesting or different about Brazilian culture compared to the US?
That's a good question. So, yeah, we talked about the shower thing. That's a big.
Mm.
It's not that Americans don't shower. So if you're listening and you're like, "Oh, so Americans don't take showers?" No, we do. We take showers. It's just it's the whole we take showers when we feel like it's necessary, right? For example,
Yeah.
like here, if let's say if you mow the grass in the morning and then there's lunch and then you're going to go to the gym after lunch. In the US, we would mow grass, eat lunch, go to the gym, and then take a shower because we
Mhm.
know it's just going to continue. Whereas here, it'd be like, okay, mow the grass, take a shower, eat lunch, take a shower, go to the gym, take a shower.
Oh,
It's like a little
yeah.
pause in between things. I think that's a big difference. Another big difference as well. Here, people are very touchy. They like to
Mm.
put their hand on your shoulder. They give you hugs. They give kisses as well. And in the US,
Okay.
we're not kissers, like kissing on the cheek kind of thing. And so it's a little awkward whenever people they want to greet you like they do here. But like for us, it's different, right? It's weird. So I think that's a big thing is just like the physical touch. Talking as well. Like here they talk a lot and they'll keep talking and talking. Even if they don't know you. It's a whole conversation. And in the US, we're not as bad as Britain with our not talking to people. We have small talk
Hmm.
where you
Yeah.
see someone in line and you're like, oh man, this line's taking forever. And the person's, yeah, I know, it's crazy. I have to be somewhere in an hour. And you're like, I know what you mean. And that's it. That's a small
Mm.
interaction. Whereas here, you might meet someone in line and you'd be like, hey, how are you? And they'll be like, oh, you know what? I'm not doing that great. And let me tell you why. They'll give you this whole like
Oh,
conversation,
as an
which is,
Australian, I could never.
yeah, no, it's nice. It's fun. It's just sometimes it's a little inconvenient, I think the word would be, because they really
Mm.
do need to go sometimes. But
Yeah.
you don't want to be rude and cut somebody off. But at the same time, it's like I have a dentist appointment and I need to go.
Yeah.
But I think that's one thing. Another thing is also sharing. So when you open like a pack, let's say you have a pack of Oreos or something,
Mm.
and you're sitting there with people and you open that pack of Oreos. For us in the States, you can open your pack of your Oreos and eat your Oreos and no one cares. In Brazil, if you open your pack of Oreos in front of 8 different people, you need to offer an Oreo to every person in your group.
Yeah.
And if you don't do that, you're rude and you have bad manners and
Yeah.
this whole thing. And so I think that's another thing. And that plays into bigger parts of society as well.
Yeah.
But that's like a small example is that
Mm.
people offer you. And then the thing is a lot of times they will offer you, but they don't expect you to accept it, but they offer
Yeah.
out of
Hmm.
kindness. And so I think sometimes like for us in the US, that's a different thing. Cause my wife, for example, my parents will be like, oh, I'm gonna send your wife some money for her birthday. And my wife will be like, oh, you don't need to. And I'm like, no, don't say that because if you tell them no, they're not gonna send it. You have to,
Mm.
for us, if someone gives you something, you accept it. Because here,
Yeah.
that's the other thing. You have to not accept twice. You have to say,
Oh,
oh,
yeah.
really? No. Okay, well, if you insist, you
Yeah.
have to go through that progression. If you don't, it's rude to accept on the first time. So you have to know
Yeah.
when to do that. But yeah, those are just some things that I think you find in like your day to day
Hmm.
life here.
Yeah. That last point, it's the same here in India. People, if they say no, they don't actually mean no. Same thing. Like my in-laws, for example, when they come over, I'll say to them, do you want tea? Because, tea in India is like gold. Do you want tea? No, it's fine. Like, we'll be leaving soon. Are you sure you don't want tea? No, it's fine. I still make tea and they still drink tea. But you ask them, they have to say no the 2 or 3 times. The same with what you said, like in Australia, it's exactly the same. If someone says no, they mean no. Do you want a tea? No, I'm okay, thank you. That's it. You leave it at that. But there were some problems I've had in the past where I didn't know this. I've mistaken the no as, okay, no. And then they've gotten offended because I haven't offered again. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I can relate to that.
Yeah.
Oh, it's all these little things that you don't know until you move to a country and you literally have to live through them. It's learn as you go.
Basically, that is living in it. Because sometimes we're like, why don't people make videos or write blogs or anything about these things? But can you imagine like being someone who
Yeah.
has to be responsible for understanding the whole culture and then preparing someone from a
Mm,
different culture to understand that. I
yeah.
feel like that's why it's just too much work for somebody to do that.
Yeah, exactly.
It's nice to live through the experience, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So, have you had any chances to exchange language skills with Brazilians? So, I know that you speak Portuguese. So, have you ever had chances to exchange skills, English or Portuguese sort of thing?
Yeah, I think in that mission that I talked about,
Hmm.
that was a really big thing for a lot of us because we always had to work with
Hmm.
a companion, right, with somebody who
Yeah.
was almost always with us all the time. And that was something that we really did was we really tried to exchange whether it was English for Portuguese and I would teach him English and he
Mm.
would teach me Portuguese, or sometimes I had some friends that were from Mexico and we would exchange Spanish for English and
Mm.
then one day we would decide to talk about Portuguese. But it was always a good exchange. And even today, I think as an English teacher who focuses a lot on helping Brazilians learn English, um,
Mm.
I get to have that where I teach somebody something and they're like, oh, okay, so in Portuguese it's like this. And I'm like, really? And we have that exchange of information. So I think even
Yeah.
today, it's I think the exchange of information is one of the best ways for you to really be able to create a good
Hmm.
relationship with somebody and also be able to learn.
Yeah. And do you think that by learning Portuguese, it has helped you become a better English teacher?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's probably one of the main reasons why people try to do English with me is because they
Mm.
notice that without trying to toot my own horn, of course I speak English pretty well, but I speak Portuguese really well. And
Mm.
people are very impressed that an American was able to learn like that. And
Yeah.
most of them tell me, they say, if I could speak English like you speak Portuguese, I would be perfectly happy. And so like
Oh.
that's already like the standard of what they want. And so they come to me and by speaking Portuguese, and it's because I always tell people, think of it like this. You have your native language who is a single child for like their whole life. And then
Mm.
at some point you go and learn a different language and they become either like a new roommate, maybe like in college, or like a new sibling. And
Yeah.
at first they're going to fight a lot and they're going to just be awful to each other because they don't know how to cooperate together. But
Hmm.
after some time, they start to get used to each other. And eventually, if one is gone for a long time, they start to miss each other. And so, like,
Mm.
I tell people that I speak English better now because I speak Portuguese. I have,
Yeah.
as a native, you speak English, but you don't master it. You don't really understand it.
Yeah.
And I think that
True.
learning another language really helps you understand how you speak your language and how to speak the other one.
Hmm.
And you find out that they end up helping each other.
Yeah.
Sometimes your English knowledge helps you understand more of this one. And maybe for
Hmm.
you, for example, you understand something in Hindi and you're like, okay, maybe if I could find a way to explain that in English, they complete each
Hmm.
other after some time.
Oh, yes, I totally agree. It's so funny because before I started learning Hindi, like out of the word types, all I knew what a noun was: person, place, thing, object, or person, place, or thing. That's all I knew. I didn't know what a verb was, adjective, adverb. I didn't know any of that. It wasn't until I started learning Hindi and I had to know what these things were. And then I started teaching, and then I was able to understand more about English grammar because I learned Hindi grammar. And so now I'm able to understand what an adjective is, what an adverb is, action verbs. And that's all because I started learning Hindi. And then obviously, then I learned more and started understanding more from teaching. But yeah, it's definitely true. So, for those people who are learning English in a Portuguese speaking environment, what advice would you give them to help them improve their language skills?
That is a good question. So I always tell people when it comes to learning English, use your Portuguese or use even your other languages if you have one, but use the language that you have to focus on the language that you want to learn, especially English, right? Because languages all have patterns, right? They have things that they follow. And like you said, if you learn what a verb is, if you learn what an adjective is, and those kind of things, you can use that to learn your English. I always tell people whenever I teach them here, I said, if you don't know a lot about Portuguese, learn more about your own language, study your own language.
Mm,
Because by studying Portuguese, you'll be able to pick up on English a lot better. Like you said, you had to learn what
yeah.
a noun was, what a verb is, an adjective. And once you learn those things, then you can translate that into the new
Hmm.
language. And I think another thing a lot of English teachers say, but I think is very important, is just relax and have fun with it. Enjoy it. Enjoy
Yeah.
the learning process because
Yeah.
it takes time. And I always hear people being like, "Oh, well, Chinese is the hardest language in the world, or Portuguese is the hardest, or English is the." Everybody grows up thinking that their native tongue is the most difficult language to
Yeah.
speak. And the thing is they all are difficult, and
Mm,
there's really not a language that's more difficult than the other. It just depends on what you know already. And
mm,
so I think that once you sit back and you take it piece by piece, that's going to make it
hmm.
better. And also, this is one thing I tell people: record yourself. We live in a day and age that you can video log your learning process.
Hmm.
So I wish
Yeah.
I would have thought of recording myself speaking Portuguese in the beginning, just
Hmm.
so that I could see how I speak it now, so I can see that
Yeah.
difference and hear it. And I think once you do
Hmm.
that, then you'll start to realize that you do get better. And also don't forget to
Yeah.
practice. Most people who
Yeah.
don't actually learn English are people who don't study.
Yeah. Definitely. I actually do that. I record myself. I post Hindi vlogs on my other channel like once a month. So I've been doing that probably for about a year and a half now, I guess. I've been doing Hindi vlogs, and before that I was doing Hindi reels because I notice my mistakes when I record myself. And that's something I also tell my students is you don't have to put it out on the internet like I did, but record yourself because you'll be able to pick up your own mistakes and set a timer, talk about random stuff for however long. But that's going to help you improve your speaking. You'll be able to check your pronunciation, but you'll also be able to track your progress. So I used to work on a different platform that automatically recorded the lessons for the students. And I would say to my students, when you buy your package with the platform, watch your first lesson. And after 1 month, after 3 months, whatever it is, watch your latest recording and then have the progress check there. And you can actually see, because at the time when we're talking, it can feel like that we're not making any progress, that we're not getting anywhere. It's not until you actually watch yourself back and you think, oh, I'm actually doing pretty well.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. So your assumptions of Australia, and I'll tell you if you're right or wrong.
Oh, that's a good question. Okay, so do you guys just eat? We assume that you just eat barbecue and shrimp, and if it's something that's interesting. So I know there's the barbecue and shrimp, but if you watch a couple videos, we learned that you guys have like this nasty paste that you put on some bread or whatever, and I forget what it is. It looks like chocolate, but it's not
Vegemite.
chocolate. Yeah, it's Vegemite. Yeah, because I remember I even looked it up to talk to you about it in the last podcast. But I
Yeah.
think like most Americans, once they learn that you guys have that process, like, oh, so that's Australia thing. They eat this like chocolate paste that doesn't taste like chocolate. Is that true?
Yeah.
Is that the barbecue and fish and
Okay.
things?
Yes. So I'm going to say you're fifth. Oh, yeah, you're right about the first one. We call them prawns, not shrimp. We don't usually put prawns on the barbie though, or the barbecue. That is something that I think when Paul Hogan or Crocodile Dundee did his TV commercial for the US, G'day America, sorry, that's what he says. G'day America, welcome to the land down under. And at the end of the ad, it's come on, I'll even throw an extra shrimp on the barbie for. And that's now like this catchphrase that has gone all around the world, and people say it to Australians, and Australians are just like, oh, we don't even do that. So some people do cook prawns on the barbecue, but it's not super common. We do love a good barbie, especially summer. This time of year in Australia is summer. So barbie season, nearly everyone will have a barbecue, like the actual barbecue at their house. Even if they don't, you can go to the beach. They have free public barbecues. You just push a button, it heats up. It has electricity like power points there. So you can bring your toaster, toast your bread, cook everything as long as you clean it before and after. There are parks as well. So, yes, barbecues are very common. Vegemite, I'm a big Vegemite fan. I have a Vegemite t-shirt. I have bought some Vegemite underwear, like branded underwear for my husband. My mum brought a couple of jars for me when she came to visit. But yes, it's going to sound really disgusting, but it tastes like soy sauce. It's very salty. You only put a
Oh,
little bit on. But I do enjoy Vegemite toast, especially with avocado and some melted cheese, like a grilled cheese kind of situation. Yeah.
doesn't sound good, but sure. Okay, we'll go with that.
Yeah. So the problem that most people make is that, yes, they think it's like chocolate. So they put this really thick layer on. You have to start really light, add it really lightly, and then taste it, and then add a little bit more. I don't even have a real thick layer that makes it look like Nutella. I'm probably like a level 3, dark around the edges, but not super heavy on the spread. So,
Oh,
yeah,
that's
most
good.
people do Vegemite, but yeah, it's an acquired taste.
And then does everybody, so I don't know why, but we have this thing of Australia is the outback. That is what we just think of the outback. And obviously
Mm.
there's the restaurant outback, and that doesn't really help with all of the stereotypes. But like for us, we see it as okay, everybody has the outback, and you all have 500 pet kangaroos who just ever you can like for me in my mind you can just walk on the street and be like kangaroos are like the second tier citizen there, like just you walk on the street and there's like a kangaroo with his family walking on the other side of the street or something. Is there
Hmm.
that many kangaroos there, or
Depends where
maybe?
you are. So this one video went viral like last year of all of these kangaroos. I think a group of people were trying to play cricket or soccer or something. Anyway, that was in my hometown. And like 20 kangaroos hopping over across the field. So it depends on where you are. Like in my hometown, you'll see kangaroos everywhere. I think you saw my story of the big snake in my dad's backyard. My dad also gets big kangaroos hanging out there as well. He once saw a dad kangaroo teaching his son how to box. They were on his back legs like this. But in big cities, like I've never seen a kangaroo in Brisbane City. But yeah, depends on the areas, like the regional areas or like the beach areas where there's more nature, you'll see them. As for what was the first one you said before the kangaroos? I
The
forget now.
outback.
Yes, the outback. Sorry. Yes, as for the outback, the term outback actually does cover most of the country. So this is something I talk about in one of my lessons is pretty much all of the Northern Territory, half of like Queensland, regional New South Wales, most of South Australia, and pretty much all of Western Australia is considered the outback. So yeah, it is like a huge part of the country. And the Australian government has some kind of measures in place for people who are trying to come to Australia or who are trying to be sponsored by an employer. in order to get their permanent residency, one of the conditions is that they have to work in a regional area. So there's two different levels, like semi-regional, which is Darwin, Perth, Adelaide. So they're still capital cities, but they're not the overpopulated ones. And then there's like really regional, which is like in the middle of the country. And that's just to stop those main cities becoming overpopulated. So
That's a
yeah.
good thing because like, if you can catch it before it happens, that's
Mm,
awesome because otherwise you'll end up with, for example, which is just people living on top
yeah.
of people. And I know in India
Yeah.
it's similar. There's just a ton of people, and so you have to be a little careful. Yeah, and then like,
Yeah.
can I explain like a typical? If I were to think of an Australian man, can I tell you what I think and
Yeah.
like see
Go
how
for it.
accurate it is? All right, so I think if I think of a typical Australian guy from the TV, so first of all, he's going to be like this white guy with blonde hair, like it's going to be like blonde long hair. He's going to have a mullet basically. Mullet, a little facial hair, blue eyes. It's going to be tan. It's going to have one of those big like hats, one of those like safari hats on.
Oh,
And then
Subra. Yep.
yeah, and then he's gonna have a like some type of beer t-shirt that he's been wearing for the last 20 years or something. It's gonna be there. And then he's gonna have a little vest as well, like a little explorer vest. And it's gonna be like he's
Like
gonna
a
be jacked,
flannelette
right?
kind of shirt without the sleeves.
Yeah, he's gonna be pretty jacked, have some pretty nice arms, and then like his shorts, he's gonna wear khaki shorts that are like 3 or 4 inches above the knee, so like borderline short shorts, but they're not. And gonna have really nice calf muscles and thigh muscles. It's just gonna just be very strong and athletic in that case. And he's gonna wear like some tube socks that go halfway up
Mm-hmm.
his calf, and then hiking boots. And that is like,
Mm.
if I think of an Australian man, that's what I expect to see when I get
Oh,
there.
yeah, look, you're not wrong. It's not all Australian men, not all men, but look, you're not wrong though. It's a pretty damn good description. I feel like you've basically just described what's his name? Travis Fimmel. Did you ever watch Vikings? The TV
I
series
think so.
Vikings?
Yeah, yeah. I watched the first
Okay,
couple.
okay. Ragnar, the
Oh,
main character, he's Aussie
okay. Yeah.
and he's
Isn't
typical Aussie.
isn't Thor? Isn't he
Oh yeah, he's
Australian?
Aussie too. Yeah,
Yeah.
Chris Hemsworth and his
I
brothers. Yeah,
yeah, I think that explains
and
it.
they're
Maybe that's
surfers.
why. Yeah, maybe that's
Yeah,
why I see it as a.
what you've described is pretty much like the Aussie surfers, I guess. They have that very kind of blonde hair, blue eye, like fit body kind of situation going on. But Travis Fimmel, a new series featuring him has come out on Netflix, and that's basically literally what his whole outfit is what you've described. So when you're
I
describing that,
haven't
I'm
seen
like,
it, but
oh,
yeah,
yeah.
no, that wasn't even. I promise everybody who's listening, I didn't prepare that. I just thought Australian man, and that's what appears to me.
Yeah, no, well, no, yeah, pretty good explanation. So, are you going to do your Aussie accent for us?
Well, okay, so here's the thing. Here's what I've learned is like it's with phrases, right? So when you have, for example, if you want to say like the whole good day, right? Good day, isn't it like good
G'day.
day?
Yeah.
Good day,
Yeah,
mate, right? And
good.
it's like a mate instead of a mate,
Yeah.
right? When we would say mate, it's
Yeah.
mate. Good day, mate. And then also I've noticed with the eyes, right? Like you don't say you'd say like that kind of thing. Oh, I'll
Yeah.
say it a lot.
My
You know,
mum
like
taught my mother-in-law to say nice.
but that's something that we make fun of in the there's even like a meme for it in the US of this guy he drinks something he's like noise. That's just how he does
Yeah.
things. That's something that we say when somebody does something we're like nice. And so
Yeah.
and then like I told you with what is it? I forget his name, but the guy starts robbing him and he's got a knife. And he's like, that's not a
Oh,
knife.
yeah. Crocodile
Face
Dundee.
the knife. And then he
Yeah.
like
Noise.
pulls out the big one. It's good. It's
Yeah.
good. I love it. But yeah, I think just
Yeah.
because of like how we see Australians in the US, because one
Hmm.
thing that I do think we see is Australians are very like I know you earlier you were talking about how like they cuss all the time and things, but we see them as like people who just like don't care. Like they don't care
Mm.
about other things. And it's when it comes to
Very
like
chilled, laid back.
yeah, and we see that like we see the Australian men are like these people who are strong, and even if you talk to girls from the US, they're always talking about oh, an Australian accent is so sexy and dreamy and attractive, and that's how they see stuff. So
Yeah.
I'm always interested in learning about Australia because, like we've talked about before, I feel like we don't talk about it enough. It's a really big place with a lot of people, and it's a whole different culture. It's
Ah,
similar to some of us, but it's a
yeah.
really cool.
Well, I did read yesterday or the day before, I think Australia's population has just crossed over 27 million. So it's going
Oh,
up slowly but surely.
right. No, but that's a good thing. Good. It's growing. It's getting
Yeah.
bigger.
So before we finish up today, if anyone wants to contact you, how can they get in touch with you?
There's Instagram. I have a website now. I finally got one. There is YouTube. I'm on TikTok, but I don't really participate in
Yeah.
TikTok. So I would say Instagram is probably the best way.
Okay.
But yeah, and thank you. Thank you for having me on the show and for being able to have this conversation. It's been a lot of
Well,
fun.
thank you so much for being here. And yes, thank you for returning the favor.
Yeah, no problem. I hope this isn't the last time.
No, I want
We'll
to keep doing these. There'll be, yeah, lots of different chit chats. I think chinwag. What do you say in the US? Do you say chinwag as well or just chit chat?
Oh, I've never heard the word chinwag before in my
Okay, so
life.
never mind.
But probably, I guess we say you could say chit chat, but that's like really cliche. I don't know. We just
Mm,
yeah, I don't think we have a
have a
word
chat.
for it. Just a chat or
Yeah.
I think because we would say get together, but get together is more of like people coming together kind of thing. But,
Yeah.
but yeah, it would just be like a get together, a chat.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but
Cool.
it's been fun. Yeah,
All right.
it's Shin. I like Shinwag.
Yes.
Have you ever watched Family Guy before? Do you know?
Mm.
Have you ever seen them make fun of Australians and talk about
No,
like how they
not
just
yet. Oh, wait,
they
have I?
create names about all kinds of different things?
No, I think I saw a Simpsons one the other day, actually. I'll have a look on YouTube and see if I can find Family Guy Australia.
That's good. It's a lot of fun.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you so much for being here. And yeah, hopefully we can do it again soon.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you.